In the late spring of 2019, a 10-year-old boy named Daniel Hoffman sat across from Dr. Margaret Whitmore in a modest therapy office in Princeton, New Jersey. The session had been scheduled to address Daniel's recurring nightmares, vivid dreams of standing before blackboards covered in symbols he couldn't understand, a feeling trapped in rooms filled with expectations he couldn't meet. But what happened the 43 minutes that followed would challenge everything Dr. Whitmore thought she knew about consciousness, memory, and the boundaries of human knowledge. Daniel closed his eyes as Dr. Whitmore guided him into a relaxed state. His breathing slowed. His hands, which had been fidgeting with the armrest, went still. Then, without warning, his entire demeanor changed. "The photoelectric effect," he said quietly, his voice taking on a different quality, more measured, deliberate. "That's what they never understood. Light behaves as particles, discrete quanta." Dr. Whitmore leaned forward. Daniel's parents had mentioned he struggled with basic arithmetic in school. He had never shown any particular aptitude for science. Yet here he was, using terminology she herself barely understood. "Who are you?" she asked gently. I was." Daniel's brow furrowed. "Albert. They call me Albert." The regression continued for another 20 minutes. Daniel, or whoever was speaking through Daniel, described a life of intense intellectual pursuit. He talked about patent offices and late nights spent wrestling with problems that seemed insurmountable. He mentioned specific people, Michelle, my wife, and Maliva before her. He described the feeling of understanding suddenly crystallizing, of seeing relationships between space, time, and energy that others couldn't grasp. Dr. Whitmore recorded everything. She had conducted hundreds of regression sessions over her 15-year career, but something about this felt different. The details were too specific, the emotion too authentic. When Daniel spoke about the loneliness of being misunderstood, tears rolled down his cheeks. "They wanted equations," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "They wanted me to reduce the infinite to symbols on a page. But some truths resist simplification." Then came the moment that would define the case. Dr. Whitmore, on impulse, retrieved a physics textbook from her shelf, a college-level text she'd kept from her undergraduate years. She opened to a page featuring an unsolved problem related to relativistic quantum mechanics, a problem that had stumped graduate students. She placed the book on Daniel's lap. "Can you solve this?" Daniel's eyes remained closed, but his right hand moved to the page. His fingers traced the symbols as if reading Braille. Then, still in the regression state, he began to speak. "The error is in the assumption of simultaneity. You're treating time as a constant when it's a variable dependent on the observer's frame of reference. If you introduce a correction factor accounting for time dilation at relativistic speeds," his hand moved across the page in fluid motions, as if writing equations in the air. "The field equations reduce to a simpler form. The solution becomes elegant." Dr. Whitmore grabbed her phone and recorded him speaking. She transcribed every word as quickly as she could write. When Daniel finished, she had 3 pages of mathematical notation that, when she later showed it to Dr. Robert Shun, a theoretical physicist at Princeton University, proved to be not only correct, but remarkably insightful. Whoever worked through this problem, Dr. Chun told her 2 days later in his cluttered office, understood physics at a very deep level. This isn't something you could memorize from a textbook. This requires intuitive grasp of how space-time actually works. Dr. Whitmore showed him the video of Daniel. Dr. Chun watched in silence, his expression shifting from skepticism to confusion to something approaching awe. "That's a 10-year-old child?" "Yes." "Has he studied physics?" "His mother says he barely passes 5th grade math. He's never taken a physics class." Dr. Chin sat back in his chair, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. "Then I don't know what to tell you." Sarah and Michael Hoffman had noticed their son's unusual behavior for months before bringing him to Dr. Whitmore. The nightmares had started shortly after Daniel's 10th birthday. He would wake screaming about failing everyone, about time running out, about equations that wouldn't come right. But there were other signs, too. Sarah found him one evening staring at a photograph in a library book, a famous image of Albert Einstein from 1921, taken when he'd won the Nobel Prize. Daniel's finger traced the face with strange familiarity. "He looks sad," Daniel had said. Everyone thinks he was happy then, but he was sad. The prize was for the photoelectric effect, not for relativity. They still didn't understand what he'd really discovered. This statement unnerved Sarah because it was accurate. Einstein had indeed felt that his greatest work, his theories of relativity, had been overlooked in favor of earlier, less revolutionary research. But this wasn't common knowledge. It certainly wasn't something a 10-year-old boy who spent most of his free time playing video games would know. After the regression session, Dr. Whitmore met with Daniel's parents to explain what had occurred. She showed them the recording, played them the audio of Daniel solving the physics problem. Sarah began crying before the video finished. "That's not my son's voice," she whispered. "I mean, it is, but it isn't. The way he's speaking, the cadence." Michael leaned forward, his engineer's mind seeking rational explanations. Could he have heard these things somewhere? Could he have memorized them without understanding? Dr. Whitmore shook her head. The problem he solved wasn't from any textbook. Dr. Chun confirmed it was a novel approach to a complex question. And the emotional content, the specific details about Einstein's personal life, his marriages, his feelings about recognition, these aren't facts you memorize. These are memories. Over the following weeks, Dr. Whitmore conducted 4 more regression sessions with Daniel. Each time, more details emerged. Daniel described the layout of Einstein's office at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, a building that still existed just 3 miles from where they sat. He mentioned a particular tree visible from the window, a tree where Einstein would walk and think during difficult problems. Dr. Whitmore contacted the institute. She spoke with Dr. Helen Vasquez, the archivist there. Yes, Dr. Vasquez confirmed, Einstein did have a favorite tree. Yes, it was visible from his office window. Yes, Einstein frequently paced beneath it. But these facts weren't in any published biography. They existed only in archived letters and staff accounts stored in the Institute's collections. "How does your son know these things?" Dr. Vasquez asked during a phone call. "That's what we're trying to understand." The case attracted attention from the Institute for Consciousness Studies, where Dr. James Morton specialized in cases of apparent past life memory. He arrived in Princeton in July 2019 to conduct his own evaluation. Dr. Morton's approach was methodical and skeptical. He had investigated hundreds of past life claims over his career, and he knew the common patterns of fabrication, false memory, and unconscious information acquisition. He designed a series of tests specifically to rule out conventional explanations. First, he presented Daniel with photographs of multiple men from Einstein's era, mixing genuine colleagues and acquaintances with similar-looking individuals who had no connection to the physicist. Daniel, not in a regression state, but simply looking at the photographs, identified 5 of the 7 actual associates. When asked how he knew, Daniel shrugged. "I just remember them." That one, he pointed to a photograph of Marcel Grossman, helped with the math. The tensor calculus. "I couldn't have done it without him." This was historically accurate. Grossman, a mathematician and friend from Einstein's university years, had indeed provided crucial mathematical assistance for Einstein's general theory of relativity. Dr. Morton then tried something more challenging. He obtained unpublished letters from the Einstein archives at Hebrew University, correspondence that had never been digitized or made public. He read excerpts aloud to Daniel, changing certain details, names, dates, specific phrases. Daniel corrected him 3 times, providing the accurate versions. "No, that's wrong," Daniel said during one reading. "I didn't write the universe seems indifferent. I wrote, the universe reveals itself slowly, like a shy child. I remember thinking about children when I wrote that. My own son was struggling in school." Dr. Morton checked the original letter. Daniel's version was exact, word for word. The most compelling test came when Dr. Morton asked Daniel to write something, anything, while in a regression state. Daniel picked up a pen and began writing on a notepad. The handwriting that emerged was nothing like his normal childish scrawl. It was flowing, distinctive, with particular flourishes and letter formations. Dr. Morton photographed the sample and sent it to 3 handwriting analysts, along with verified samples of Einstein's handwriting. All 3 analysts noted striking similarities: the formation of certain letters, the spacing, the overall flow. One analyst wrote, "If I didn't know these samples were 70 years apart, I would say they were written by the same person at different ages." But not everyone was convinced. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a cognitive psychologist at Columbia University, proposed an alternative explanation. She believed Daniel might be experiencing a form of cryptomnesia, the phenomenon where forgotten memories resurface and are mistaken for new knowledge or past life recall. Children are exposed to enormous amounts of information through media, school, casual conversations, Dr. Reynolds explained when Dr. Whitmore consulted her. Daniel could have absorbed facts about Einstein years ago and forgotten the source. Under regression, these forgotten memories resurface, and the brain constructs a narrative around them. The sense of being Einstein is the mind's way of organizing this orphaned information. It was a reasonable hypothesis, but it struggled to explain certain elements. The unpublished letters, for instance, or the novel solution to the physics problem. Dr. Reynolds suggested these could be explained by exceptional unconscious processing, Daniel's brain making connections that his conscious mind couldn't articulate. Some individuals have extraordinary pattern recognition abilities, she said. Perhaps Daniel saw elements of that physics problem in different contexts, a science documentary, an illustration in a magazine, and his unconscious mind assembled a solution without his awareness. Dr. Whitmore found this explanation unsatisfying but couldn't dismiss it entirely. Science, she knew, required considering conventional explanations before embracing extraordinary ones. The breakthrough came in August 2019, during what would be Daniel's final regression session. Dr. Whitmore had invited Dr. Morton and Dr. Chun to observe. Daniel settled into the familiar chair, his parents watching anxiously from the corner of the room. As Daniel entered the regression state, Dr. Whitmore asked him to describe a specific moment, something private, something that wouldn't appear in any biography or archive. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he began to speak, his voice carrying that same measure quality it took on during regressions. "I'm standing by a window. It's evening. The light is golden, that particular gold you only see in autumn in Princeton. I'm thinking about a conversation I had earlier with Kurt Gödel. He's been talking about time, about closed time-like curves, about the possibility that time isn't what we think it is." He paused, his eyes moving beneath their closed lids, as if watching a scene unfold. "I'm thinking that maybe he's right. Maybe consciousness doesn't flow in one direction. Maybe these moments we experience as past are just elsewhere, not gone, just elsewhere in the landscape of space-time. And if consciousness can exist anywhere in that landscape, then maybe what we call reincarnation is just consciousness finding another point of entry, another perspective from which to experience the pattern." Dr. Chun, who had remained skeptical throughout, sat forward. Did Einstein really think about reincarnation? Dr. Whitmore shook her head. "Not in any published work I've found." But 3 weeks later, a research assistant at the Institute for Advanced Study, working through recently declassified materials, discovered a personal journal entry from Einstein dated October 1947. In it, Einstein mused about consciousness, time, and the possibility of experiencing existence from multiple temporal vantage points. The passage closely mirrored what Daniel had described. The entry had been restricted due to its personal nature and had only just been made available to researchers. Daniel could not possibly have seen it. As months passed, Daniel's memories began to fade, a pattern common in past life cases involving children. The nightmares stopped. The emotional weight he'd been carrying, a burden that had seemed far too heavy for a 10-year-old, lifted. He became, in many ways, a normal child again. But something remained. His relationship with mathematics transformed. The struggle that had characterized his early schooling vanished. His teachers reported that he suddenly grasped concepts that had eluded him before. By 6th grade, he was taking high school-level math courses. By 8th grade, he was studying calculus. It's like something unlocked, his math teacher, Mrs. Patricia Wong, told his parents during a conference. He doesn't just memorize formulas. He understands relationships, patterns. He sees math the way most people see pictures. Dr. Whitmore continued to follow Daniel's development, meeting with him every few months. During one session in 2021, when Daniel was 12, she asked him what he remembered about being Einstein. Daniel thought for a moment. It's like remembering a dream now. I know it happened, but the details are fuzzy. What I remember most is the feeling, this intense desire to understand, to see how things fit together, and loneliness, being alone with ideas that nobody else could see. He looked at Dr. Whitmore with eyes that seemed older than his years. Do you think it was real? That I really was him? Dr. Whitmore chose her words carefully. I think something real happened to you. Whether it was memory of a past life, or something else we don't have words for yet, I can't say with certainty. But the knowledge was real. The emotion was real. And whatever the explanation, your experience has value. The case of Daniel Hoffman remains one of the most extensively documented examples of apparent past life memory involving a verifiable historical figure. Dr. Morton published a detailed analysis in the Journal of Consciousness Studies in 2020, presenting the evidence without claiming definitive proof of reincarnation. Instead, he framed it as a challenge to conventional models of consciousness and memory. Whether we're dealing with genuine past life recall, some form of non-local consciousness, or a phenomenon we don't yet have the theoretical framework to understand, he wrote, cases like Daniel's demand serious investigation. The alternative, dismissing them without examination, serves neither scientific inquiry nor understanding of human consciousness. Dr. Reynolds maintained her skepticism, publishing a response article that outlined possible conventional explanations. But even she acknowledged the case's unusual elements. The Hoffman case presents challenges to simple explanations. While I remain unconvinced of the past life hypothesis, I agree that the phenomenon warrants continued study. For the Hoffman family, the experience transformed their understanding of their son and, perhaps, of consciousness itself. Sarah Hoffman reflected on this during an interview in 2022. Before this happened, I thought I understood the boundaries of what's possible. I thought consciousness was confined to individual lives, individual brains. Now I don't know what to think. But I look at Daniel, at the person he's becoming, and I see gifts that weren't there before. Whether those came from Einstein's consciousness somehow touching his, or from something within Daniel that was awakened, I'm grateful for them. Daniel himself, now a teenager pursuing advanced studies in theoretical physics, speaks carefully about his experience. In a rare interview conducted for this investigation, he said, "People want a simple answer. Either it was real or it wasn't. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe consciousness is stranger and more expansive than our categories allow for." Einstein spent his life trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality. If some echo of that understanding found its way to me, through whatever mechanism, then maybe the important thing isn't proving how it happened. Maybe the important thing is learning from it and continuing the work of understanding. In Princeton, the tree that Einstein loved, the tree that Daniel described with such specificity, still stands outside the Institute for Advanced Study. Students and visitors sometimes pause beneath its branches, perhaps hoping to catch some inspiration from the ground where genius once walked. Dr. Whitmore visits it occasionally. She stands in the spot where both Einstein and, if the case is what it appears to be, Daniel once stood in different bodies separated by decades. She thinks about the nature of time, of consciousness, of the strange persistence of memory across the boundary we call death. She doesn't claim to have answers, but she knows what she documented, what she witnessed. She knows that a 10-year-old boy with no physics training solved a problem that challenged graduate students. She knows he described private, unrecorded moments from Einstein's life with uncanny accuracy. She knows his handwriting, under regression, matched Einstein's in statistically improbable ways. Whether consciousness truly survives death, whether some aspect of Einstein found expression through Daniel Hoffman, or whether some other explanation will eventually emerge, these questions remain open. But the case stands as a reminder that consciousness may be far stranger, far more expansive than our current models accommodate. The universe, as Einstein himself wrote, is not only stranger than we imagine, it may be stranger than we can imagine. If this investigation into the boundaries of consciousness and the possibility of past life memory has intrigued you, there's more to explore. Subscribe to this channel for deeper investigations into cases that challenge our understanding of who we are, where consciousness resides, and whether the boundary between lives is as absolute as we believe. Each story is carefully researched, every claim examined with rigor and openness. Join us as we explore the frontiers of human consciousness, where science meets mystery and where the questions matter as much as the answers. Subscribe now and never miss a journey into the extraordinary.